Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're wiring up the LS and we're going to start it up. I'm going to run you through everything to get to this stage. I'll show you where all these little power wires go and what I've done to sort this situation out. I hope you enjoy this video. I know it's been 2 months, so the video might be a little bit crazy. I might have different haircuts and all that stuff, but this is how to wire an LS essentially. Enjoy it. How you doing, guys? We're doing some wiring today. What I've discovered is it's a bit difficult on this car because I can't find a wiring diagram because it's so old. But what I want to do is splice the original wiring harness. Splice the original wiring harness into the LS's harness. So then I'll have like a plug and it'll be controlled by this old school fuse box because I think that would be quite funny. So then these would actually do something, not just be there to make it look old school. This little red wire down here is the one that activates the starter. I found that out using a multimeter, checking ohms. I got it on the beep mode, so I had someone in the car clicking away. This other one here is ignition. So we can use that to cycle the ignition for the ECU, turn that on and off. And then we can also use that ignition switch to activate some relays for the fuel pump. So it'll have its own separate fuel pump wiring as well as all the rest, because it's good to get big volts to the pump. Anyway, I'll take you through the wiring because everyone wants to know what that's all about. I'm going to wire it up before I make these pipes and stuff. I've just been mocking them up, eyeballing, as you've seen. And the reason I'm not putting them on now is because they're going to get in the way as I'm trying to run the wires down there. Same as the exhausts. But anyway, that's that. Let's get into it. Alright, so when you're wiring up your Ls1, you want to get your plugs, take off the plastic thing, they just unclip on both of them. So they're free. And then what you want to try and do is get a wiring diagram or a pinout sheet. I printed them out because when I was looking on my phone or the computer, it gets heaps dirty on the fingers, so I just print them out. And what you want to find are a few important parts. So this one here, that's like a serial one, that's to scan it. That's pin 58 on the blue plug, as it says on your sheet. Pretty sure that's the scanner one. I've actually never done this, so, but it will be. And then you've got like battery input. What's this one? There's a tacho output there if you want to put in your old tacho or whatever. And you've got it all, you know, O2 sensor, 12 volts, stuff like that. The O2 sensors run a separate voltage, and so do the coils on these. So the coil pack has this plug, and the top one here, which is actually a green wire, that's a power supply, which comes from this plug here, which it'll be different depending where you get your LS1 from, but on the Commodore that we got this out of, this has just a bunch of power cables that feed both sides, both banks of the coils. It's got an earth. It also has a power supply for the transmission, which is needed on the auto. So we're going to run these into one plug, which will go to a couple of relays, maybe just even one relay for the coils and then another one for the other stuff, so you can help diagnose stuff better. But that means we've got to peel all this back, and then we'll find out where they go and we'll run a separate plug. I know it might look freaky having all this everywhere, but as long as you have a sheet, it's not that difficult to do. You could probably get away with not using as much stuff as we are, like the, I don't know, some of these bits are for the AC, which we're just going to leave flopping around. So when we put AC on it, we've got AC. Anyway, I'll run you through it a bit further in the future, like when we start putting it on the car. There's also like this one here's the reverse light switch, which goes onto this big plug here, which goes onto the 4L60E. Anyway, the fan is also a very important thing to wire up. You have to change the speed of it because you can adjust that so the ECU will cut it in and out. But we'll tidy this up and we'll sit it on the car, then I'll run you through what we're going to do and what wires to run where. Alright, so what I've done, cut off the plug that I have no receiving end for. This is all the voltage inputs for the coil packs. You don't have to put a plug all the way here. The loom's in really good nick, so I'm just going to put it onto here, which is really close to the battery and fuse box as is. So I'm going to put one of these Deutsch plugs, these German named sort of European plugs on it. There's only 5 wires I have here. One's an earth, 4 are power, and I'm going to use the 6th one as the signal wire for the starter motor, so I can splice it into this loom. So if you ever have to take the engine out, it's just boof, one here, take the looms off inside, and then that will be that. If you've never used these before, you get a little crimpy tool thing and you crimp these guys on the ends. But that's that. You have to make sure you remember which one is on the other side. We know that because we have a loom. Anyway, so let's get crimping. Alright, so we've laid the loom onto the car. These ones here scoot down the back. They're the auto, like the shifters and stuff. These ones here come up. If your car's manual, you won't have all this obviously. And all these is a few power supplies that have to go down to the switch. As you see here, you need 2 volts. You got supply volt for the reverse lamp and stuff. So that's all that these are, so don't freak out if I haven't explained it. They just go to this plug. The earth shares the same earth as the loom. We never touched any of this loom. We've left on the plug for the AC compressor because we will put that on one day and save us routing it all the way back through. All I've done is put some conduit on it. I'm going to do the rest of that now on this side. This sensor is also like a crank angle sensor down the bottom that needs some heat shielding and stuff like that. That's it for now. It's freezing cold down the garage. It's like 17 degrees. That is cold for Australian standards. So I got heaps of layers on now. So we'll continue on the loom and then I'll show you where I'm going to put the wires for the power over there. Mate. We're trying to figure out what all these wires here do as opposed to what they do not do. It's a little hard to see the screen, but at the moment we got 2 millivolts. And if I cycle the ignition, not going to be able to see it from here, but there you go, 12 volts. So that's the trigger for the starter motor. That one here with the red thingy. We can also find out what this one does. So we've got ignition off at the moment. Poke him in there, it's on the earth. Nothing going through. It's a bit hard to see, but from here. So that's ignition on. That is also a trigger for the starter motor, which is strange. I'm not sure why it has 2. One must be for something else that was on the car. This big one here with the black, this one is just nothing. But if I put ignition on, sorry about this running back and forth, guys. So this is just ignition now, not triggering the crank. There you go, 12 volts. That's a very thick wire, so I'm going to take off that one to power up a few of my ignition supplies. No, I said I was going to use this fuse box for all the fuses and that, but I'll never be able to find these sort of fusible links. These guys are alright, but these relays, like, I'm pretty sure you can get them, but I have a very big abundance of the normal style relays. So I just got myself one of these little fuse boxes. They're pretty cheap. Just going to mount it there next to that, and this one will do all the engine stuff. So engine and all the good stuff. This one's got the lights and that. So we'll just make up a little bracket out of aluminium, because aluminium is light. Light equals fast. Alright, so I'm doing the battery cable now. What you got to do is put on a big power lead to the stud, to your battery, and then put like a trigger to the little spade. So I've made up this this lead. It was off a car that I was wrecking, so took the lead off it. I found this awesome heat shielding stuff. It's pretty good. That's off a Rover 75 V6. And what you got to do is put a little spade on there, and then I'm going to run this guy inside this as well, so they'll both be together. And then over there where the connector comes through, I managed to find a plug that fits that, so I can tap straight onto there, and that'll be one part of the wiring down. And then I'll show you some more bits. Got the fuse box in, made this little bracket up for it. What I'm going to do now is wire up the fuse box by introducing like a power supply, which will go to the power side of the relays, and they will be triggered by an ignition source. Those powers will also include a power which will take off one of these fuses, which can be for the battery positive to the ECU. So it'll be like, this is all to do with the engine management and stuff, and then the rest of the stuff will be in this. Like, this has got a headlights already. So this wire here is an ignition trigger. It's right here in the engine bay, which it makes it handy to get to. But what I will do is I'll put a plug on this, because I want to use these sort of plugs for a few other things as well. That one there, as I showed you before, is the starter motor trigger, which goes onto this guy, but I just need to get some conduit for that. So that's done, and then I'll run you through what all these labeled wires do. Here's what I've come up with so far. Got the fuse box underneath. There's all the wires. So the power comes up, these guys, splits up a bit, heads into all these relays. So these fuses will all be hot, as they say. So they're hot fuses. Then the power will come out of these and go to where it has to. And on the other side, it'll just be all the little triggers. So you'll have like an ignition, which will do all your coils and stuff. Probably a fuel pump, fan. I don't know what else, other stuff. I have to look at the thing. But anyway, so that's sort of what I'm doing. I'll probably only need 4. I've got 5th one and this one also. I'm probably not going to use that, because I'll use this last fuse spot as the battery power to the ECU. This is just some like conduity stuff I found. Looks nice, looks pretty factory, and I got this cool little, it's like a Worth branded cloth tape. Anyway, we'll continue going on with this. At the car now, we're at the plug. What I've done is I found sort of all the wiring where it needs to go. When it comes to about here, once it's sort of like tucked up, it'll come through. And then this sort of part here where these little dudes are sprouting out from is where I will make, like, all the wires that have to come into the bay go and the ones that go inside go. So what we're going to need, it'll be like, what's this one? That's the fuel pump, so we'll need that in the bay so we can trigger a relay. We'll also need like the power supply, the ignition, like this one here. This is the serial for scanning that can stay inside. That's an ignition retard something. What's that one? Vehicle speed sensor, that can stay inside. We've also got the tacho, which will also stay inside. So a few things come out, like the fan, yeah, that's really it. Fan, the powers and stuff. These three wires you see here, this one here is the O2 power supply. So you shove some power down that, it goes down to these plugs here, which go to the O2 sensors. Also on your loom, on this particular loom, it comes up to a plug up the end here, which I've put a Deutsch plug on. And this is all your power supplies in for the coil pack. So like that light green one, it goes to here, which feeds all the coils. There's also, where'd that plug go? It says here, also an earth in here. There's another plug, power supply for the transmission. I think that red one, or the pink and blue, one of them is the other coil plug on this side here. Oh no, it's the red one. So that's what that red one is there. So you just send some powers down these, put them on a switch. So this plug here that I've put on, when you put ignition on, it sends power up here, which will go into my fuse box and turn on the relays I want it to, and then it'll send it to the rest of the magic car. This plug here is the air temp sensor. I'm not sure if I'm going to leave it here because we haven't sort of decided where we're putting the intake pipe, or like if we're going to do one over the cowl or over there. In Australia, they're pretty strict on where you do it. We're not in America, can't have it flying out the bonnet or something. So that's sort of what we're doing. The wiring is continuing. We've got the fuse box here now. I've added on this plug, which will go to all the wires up there, like the powers and stuff for the ECU. They're on an ignition switch, although one is permanent battery life, which is this red wire. That's that. This is also going to have the plugs and wires come through it for the fan, the fuel pump, sorry, and a bunch of other stuff over there. There's also a power supply for the switch on the side of the gearbox, which allows you to put the inhibitor switch on it and make it work as it should, because it's a safety thing. Here's a little setup you can do, guys, if you're trying to find out what does what. This is a test light. I've got it onto the earth. It goes down and it clips onto the wire of the fuel pump. So in most cases, when you do this, you'll switch an earth, so you'll be a power going in, but in the, see how it lights up and then turns off? So in this case, it actually sends out a power signal to the relay on what you want to switch. I didn't know about this. I did look a bunch on like Google and stuff, and I couldn't find a definitive answer. People were going both ways, so I've tried it myself, but you've seen it here first. It sends a power signal, and then that's all we need to know. So now that like I've finished the loom, in the fact that I have to make it, is it's time to sort of tape it up. I have this cloth tape stuff that I use, where I will use it for most of it, where it kind of goes through here to my rub-on stuff. I also have this like heat-proofing tape, which is here when the exhaust will radiate up onto it. Probably a bit unnecessary, but I have the tape, so I thought I'd put it on, and it looks pretty cool. We've wired up the car pretty much. We just have to put on these O2 sensor bungs, and then we can put these O2 sensors in. so we can get a reading, then we can start the car. After welding on the O2 sensor little bungs, I decided to make some little heat shields up for the exhausts before I bolt them on, and this way it's off the car and it's already done. I have to put them on twice. So you start off a bit of channel, just weld a nut on the middle, and then you can weld this channel onto the exhaust. I've done it this way because if you just weld the nut, it's not quite high enough, so little thing like that. It's just a little Torx thing. It's got a big headed bolt on it, so surface area is good and doesn't rip through. This heat shield, this is off a 2005 Range Rover Vogue. They got heaps of that stuff underneath, so it's good if you go to scrappers and steal that stuff off them. This side here is the side that faces the heat, so we'll put it on. This side's going to look like that, and the exhaust going underneath, and it'll just come down. It's good stuff, and it's free if you know who the people at the wreckers are. Anyway, we'll weld these on, and I'll weld them onto the exhaust, then we'll put it back on. What I've done essentially is from the battery, I've run 2 thick power cables, 30 amps each, split them up, and they go to all the sides of the fuse in the fuse box. So all of these fuses are powered up from the battery all the time. Then they go to certain relays and then throughout the car. What I've also done is jumped into the old loom, which is underneath here. That's the earth. There's an old loom which comes in through this plug, and that sends an ignition signal to trigger these relays. This green wire is the fuel pump prime, which is this relay. So what will happen is whenever you put ignition on, turns him on, primes it up. To find that wire, I used a test light. This plug here is one that I added onto the loom. So these wires here all come directly from the ECU as their like triggers and powers in, you could say. So that red wire down the bottom there, that's battery on for the ECU. So you got to add a battery cable in, which is at the plug. I don't know what plug. So you add a power in, which if you get your schematics, it'll say which one is BAT plus. Then you have an ignition, which is the switch wire, which comes in, and that tells that when to turn on. From that, you have all your triggers like your fan relay, your fuel pump, and that's about it actually. Before you can start your LS, you've got to plumb up the transmission as well, otherwise it'll just piss out oil everywhere. Alright, thanks for watching this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. That's the car, that's how you wire it up. I don't remember how much footage I had and whatever. So this episode might be a bit crazy, but it'll get you through hopefully. Just remember, power ignition and let it talk to your fuel pump, and this will run. Be sure to send your ECU away to get the VATS removed, which is Vehicle Anti-Theft System. Otherwise it won't start. With that off, it should start without a lot of the stuff. So hope you enjoyed this one. We'll see you on the next one. See ya.